Hello and welcome everyone. So we are done with our C++ portion of this series and now we'll move to blueprints. But before we're going to start implementing our abilities, first we want to do is just set up the project so it's easier to visualize and debug the project while we are using the gameplay ability system. So first what I'm going to do is simply just create a new folder and call this gas, and this is going to contain all our abilities and the required resources to make our abilities work. And just to differentiate it, I'm going to set its color to something like this, so it's just a bit different from the others. And if you have already added this Paragon Gideon, and if you go to this folder, and you'll see we have our Gideon player character. So just to save time, I'm going to be using this. So just drag it and drop this over here, and I'm going to choose copy here, move here, save this, and just to differentiate it, I'm going to name this as gas player character. Okay, so there is a problem with using this technique, and I'll show you a little bit later. But first I'm going to do is create a new blueprint class, and this is going to be a type game mode, and call this game mode underscore gas. Okay, open this up, compile and save this, and I am going to just change our default pawn class to our gas player character. Okay, compile and save this, and inside of this third person, go to your world setting. If you don't see this, just go to Windows and it should be over here, this world settings. Okay, and I'm going to choose this game mode override and just select this and press this button. Okay, so we have our gas player character as our default player character. So if I delete this and press play, you see I have my Gideon character, but you see a slight problem over here. Okay, so when I press my left mouse button, he shoots his projectile, or rather does his animation for projectile, and it just stops doing this even though I'm pressing a button. Now this is because if you open this up, you will see we have this logic for our projectile animation, and if we open up our blueprint for this animation, what you will see over here in the event graph is this is all nice, but the real problem is this thing. This is casting to Gideon player character, but we have named our player as gas player character, so this is not going to work. So just to get around this, what we're going to do is go to our this gas folder, and now we are going to create another blueprint, and this is going to be blueprint interface, and I'm going to call this bpi underscore anim interface. Okay, open this up. So this is not like a regular blueprint, you just declare the functions over here. So I'm going to call this trigger save attack, and a new function I'm going to call this trigger reset combo. Okay, compile and save this and close this, and go back to your player character blueprint, and inside of your class settings you should see this interface, and I'm going to say add and just search for that anim interface. Okay, compile and save this. So instead of using these events, what I'm going to do is go to over here and say right click implement event, and this is for the reset combo. So I'm going to just pick it up over here, and it's like this, delete this, we don't need this, and I'm going to use this save tag, say the implement event, and I am going to link this over here and delete this, compile and save this. So now what I'm going to do is go back to our animation blueprint and delete this, and just drag out from here and search for does implement interface. Okay, for this I'm going to search the same interface VPI anim interface, branch over here, and I don't need this, so I'm going to drag out from here and say trigger save attack, this one, and link this up like this, and I'll delete these, and I'm going to do this same thing, so I should rather copy and paste this over here. Okay, and drag out from here and search for trigger reset combo. Okay, so now what should happen is that this animation blueprint should work with my gas player character. So let's test it out. So it's working, the animation system is working. Okay, but there's also another problem over here. It's not a problem, but we haven't addressed this like this. So if I right click and search for my ability system component, I don't find it over here. This is because this gas player character is still inheriting from the default character class. What we're going to do is change this character class to our gas character class that we recently implemented inside of C++. So to change that, go to your class settings and select this parent class option and change this to gas character. Okay, compile and save this. So now what you should see is we have this ability system component over here, and we should also have our attribute set, this one, and this also has our health, mana, max health, and that sort of stuff. Okay, so this is fine. But what if you don't have this gas player character already implemented inside of blueprints? You want to start from scratch. What you could do is go to your C++ classes, gas application, public, and then just right click on this and select this create blueprint class based on gas character. Okay, so I had done this just to save time because it has set up all the inputs necessary to make this work. So I'll be using this technique going forward, and I don't need this gamepad input, and I don't need this, and I don't need my touch input, and I'll leave this as is for now, but we're going to replace this with our own system. Okay, and now what I want to do is just implement some inputs for our abilities. So going to project setting and go to input, and I'm going to define a few action mappings. Okay, so first one is going to be primary action. Okay, and this is going to be my left mouse button. Next, I'm going to define my secondary action, and this is going to be my right mouse button. And then I'm going to say Q ability action, this. Okay, and this is going to be Q, and I have my E ability action. Okay, and this is going to be my E key, and then I'll have my ultimate R. Okay, and this is going to be my R key. Okay, so I've defined my 5 action inputs for use to activate my gameplay abilities. And going back, we are going to implement our user interface. Okay, so go back to your folder gas, and let's organize this a bit. So I'll just create a new folder and call this character, and move this over here. Okay, and I'm going to create a new folder and call this interfaces. We'll be adding a few more interfaces going forward. Okay, and create a new folder and call this UMG. Go inside of this and create a new blueprint class, rather user interface class called widget blueprint, and we call this UMG underscore player UI. Okay, open this up, and I am going to drag a progress bar and call this health bar. Okay, and I want this to be like 400 by 30. Okay, set the anchor to this one, and I want this to be like minus 0.3, and this is going to be like 5 or 7. Okay, I want to change the color to red to represent health. Okay, let's see this. Okay, I'll duplicate this, and I am going to rename this to mana bar. Okay, and I'm going to do same things with this, and change this to like 5. Okay, and change the color to blue. Okay, so this is done. Now what I want to do is link the percentages of these to my health and mana of my character. So what I'm going to do is just create binding for the percentage, and for the mana what I'm going to do is similar thing like this, bind and create binding. Okay, compile and save this. So once this is done, what I want to do is create an interface to get these values from my character. So going back to our interfaces folder, I'm going to create a new interface, and so this one I'm going to call this BPI user interface. Okay, open this up, and I'm going to say get health values. Okay, and I'm going to create a new. I'm going to declare some outputs for this before I duplicate this. So it's going to be health, and this is going to type float. Add a new parameter. It's going to be called max health, and it's also going to type float. And I'm going to duplicate this. Oh, I forgot. And it's going to be get mana values. Okay, and change these to mana and max mana. Okay, compile and save this, and we're going to use this interface inside of our player character. So go to your class settings, add a new interface, and search for BPI user interface. Okay, compile and save this. And I am going to implement these abilities. Oh, there's a naming conflict, so we have to change these names to like get health value UI. Okay, and get mana value UI. Okay, compile and save this, and going to our player character, there should be resolved. Okay, it's done. What I'm going to do is right click and say open graph, and for the mana values what I'm going to say, just right click and search for get mana values like this. Okay, and link these up like these, and then just open this graph and search for get health values, and like this and like this. Okay, so this is done. And going back to our player UI, I'm going to open my health function and search for get owning player pawn, search for does implement interface, and search for BPI underscore user interface, and then go branch. Okay, like so. And what I want to do is drag it from here and say get health value UI. Okay, and for the percentage what I'm going to do is just divide this health by my max health. So this is going to give us a normalized value between 0 and 1 for our health, and if it does not implement the interface, I just want to return 0. And let's just clean this up a bit. Okay, and I can just copy this and go to our mana and paste this and delete this because we'll be needing mana instead of health. So I'm going to say get mana values UI, link this over here, divide this by max mana, and just drag this over here like so. Okay, so oops, and I want to return an empty value if we are not implementing our interface. Compile and save this. Now we just need to add this to our player character. So on event graph, what I'm going to do is just create a new function called, call the function begin play over here, and I am going to implement my user interface somewhere over here. So I'm going to say custom event and just call this add user interface. Okay, so drag out from here and say create widget. Okay, and select our interface. This is going to UMG player UI, and just drag out from say add to viewport. Okay, and on the begin play I'm going to call that function add user interface, and I'm going to comment this so I remember this. Where is my begin play? Change the color like so. Okay, compile and save this. So let's just test it out. So this is because our ability system component requires an attribute set, and that attribute set has to be initialized with some default values. So we can see over here it says attribute test and default starting data. So we can add an element for this and just select our gas attribute set. And for the starting table, what I will do is just click on this and say data table. And I want to save this in my gas folder, and I'm going to call this initial attribute. Okay, save this. And from this row structure, just search for attribute metadata, click OK, and I'm going to open this up. And over here what you want to do is just populate this table with your default attribute values. So the way this works is just click on this add, double click this and type your attribute class name. So in my case it is gas attribute set, and then dot and your attribute name. This is going to be health in my case. Remember, this is case sensitive and this should be exactly like you have defined inside of your C++. Now this is going to be gas attribute set instead of attribute set var, because attribute set var is the name of the attribute variable inside of this character, and the class name that we are using, rather the class of the attribute set variable, is gas attribute set. Okay, just remember this difference. So I am going to set the base value to like 100 and the max value to 100 as well. Now this feature is not implemented as far as I know inside of the gameplay ability system as of yet, but in the future it might be implemented and we may not have to use that max health attribute separately. But for now we have to rely on this max health. What I'm going to do is actually let's just duplicate this and rename this to max health. Okay, duplicate this again and change this to mana, and duplicate this and change this to max mana, and just two more, and this is going to be base attack damage, and other one is speed multiplier. Okay, now just set the values. For the mana I'm also going to be using let's go with 150, and this is going to be 150 as well. And for the max mana I'm going to set this to 150 as well, and the base attack damage is going to be like 20, and this is going to go all the way up to like 50. Okay, and the speed multiplier is going to be 1, and I'm not going to be worried too much about this. Okay, and now going back to our player character class, we have these initial attributes. Hit compile and save this, and let's just test it out. Okay, so it's not crashing this time, and it's showing me our health and mana as 100%. But just to visualize this, I'm going to change my mana from 150 to 100 and keep the max mana at 150. So it should show me something less than full for the mana bar. Okay, so our user interface is working fine. Let's also just change the folder structure for this and call this data table. Okay, and drag this over here. Okay, so this is done, and I think this is it for this video. And in the next video we're going to actually start implementing some of the abilities and move along and just extend our player character with more and more abilities. So this is it for this video. Thank you very much.